Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is a movie adaptation of a graphic novel type thing by a Canadian graphic novel type guy that was adapted by director Edgar Wright, who previously made the British TV series Spaced, which is really good, as well as the films Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, and as a result found himself one of the hottest young directors around. The film stars Canadian Michael Cera as Scott Pilgrim, a 22-year-old slacker who plays bass in a band, crashes permanently at his super hip gay friend's place, who's played by Kieran Culkin, and dates a high schooler named Knives for seemingly no reason. He falls for an American transplant, the dyed-haired rollerblading courier for Amazon.ca, Ramona Flowers, and he eventually finds, after a very brief romance, that he must engage in single combat and defeat the League, 7 of Ramona's evil exes headed by the mysterious Gideon, and defeat them all in turn if he is to continue to date Ramona and eventually win her hand. The film is almost impossible, really, to describe. It's a riot, basically, non-stop. Almost every scene is interrupted in some way by some bit of textual CGI effects or non-linear cutting. It's a piece of fantasy filmmaking, really, except instead of sandals and swords and wizards on mountains, it uses as its grammar the flotsam and jetsam of late 20th century, 80s and 90s plastic culture. Characters take off in the air and start flying around the inside of Lee's palace and shoot anime fireballs while singing Bollywood songs with hipster demon women floating behind them. During interior scenes where characters have a funny conversation, the Seinfeld theme plays and a laugh track emerges and then disappears out of nowhere. Video game health bars appear over characters' heads out of nowhere, not even when they're fighting, when they're peeing, and when Pilgrim defeats one of the bad guys with a fiery katana, they usually explode somehow into a shower of golden coins. It's a hyper-ironic pastiche of what's normally thought of as disposable consumer culture, anime, video games, sitcoms, that's molded around what's actually a relatively straightforward and emotionally honest, romantic story of early 20-somethings having a series of complicated interpersonal romantic relationships. It's really, at its core, part Bret Easton Ellis and part Kung Fu Hustle and part The Legend of Zelda. And it's really, really, really funny and nearly endlessly creative. And it's also the kind of thing that would be really wearying, utterly wearying, the way that non-stop detachment and irony is wearying, were the subject material not in the hands of guys like Cera, who's an extremely talented actor, and Wright, who's an extremely talented director. And they're both people that are utterly dedicated to the craft of filmmaking and all the attention to detail that that dedication to craft necessitates. The most surprising thing about Scott Pilgrim vs. the World isn't that it uses action scenes set in some kind of crazy video game fantasy land to interrupt the romance. It's that the actual kung fu in the film is really, really, really well done. The scenes where Michael Cera, who is 94 pounds in a hyper-ironic SARS t-shirt, fighting a bunch of ninjas with a katana, it's good kung fu, which is amazing. The fights are great. The effects are great. They're not there as the punchline. They're there as a punchline in a film that, from start to finish, is very, very funny. They're legitimate action moments, real heartfelt fight action moments in a Frankenstein's monster of a film that's built out of disposable 80s culture parts. It's a film like Wright's other films, a film that's incredibly intelligent, made with an incredible dedication to craft, that's sly and funny and subverts totally the idea that there has to be some kind of aspirational hero journey or moment at the heart of a romantic action picture. Instead, it's just really funny, endlessly creative, and really well done. Also, Kieran Culkin is probably the best thing in it and should be in way more films.